let's talk about Kim Kardashian hacked my home, which is absolutely true. So there's a few things that I want to talk about here. This started about 3 months back. And first of all, I want to assure you that it's not a conspiracy theory, even though, as we'll see in the next slide, I am not a conspiracy theorist, and I don't try and look for these kind of dark things going on. Generally, when I see something happen, I take it at face value and I look at that. However, there are times when they are out to get you. And I thought this might be one of those times, but I'm going to have to go back to the beginning and tell you the whole story of really how we get here, and then talk a little bit about what the impact is on us, because as identity professionals, it's something that's really important with us. I discovered this totally by accident. Completely by accident. I was actually traveling on the road, and what I discovered was that this woman was hacking into my home. Kim Kardashian, for those of you that don't know Kim Kardashian, she's part of an entire family of people that act out their lives on television. And some of us, I'm not one of those people, but some of us watch their antics on television every week to see what they get up to. So this particular week, I, as many of you know me, as I'm wont to do, was stuck in an airport somewhere. I was flying off somewhere. And generally, again, as many of us here are often sort of faced with, in the evening, we get a phone call from home. We look forward to the phone call from home. How did everything go? What was happening? This particular evening, I got a phone call from family at home, and she was laughing. She was laughing hysterically. And she was telling me a story. She had just finished watching the Kardashian show. Now, it wasn't anything funny in the Kardashian show, even though I assume you can get hysterical over the Kardashian show. But I want to show you a little clip that caused the hilarity.
Alexa, who is Kourtney Kardashian?
Sorry, it looks like I didn't hear you correctly. Please try again.
My Alexa was actually answering Kourtney, or Kim, on the television. Now, at home, I am the proud owner of an Amazon Echo. Actually, I lie. I am the proud owner of 2 Amazon Echoes. One of them looks just like that blue one sitting on her table, and the other one is this very attractive portable version. But what was happening was, on the show, Kim was talking to her Alexa and started talking about Kourtney. Obviously, this was several months beforehand, because on the show, it speaks for about 20 seconds, telling you who Kourtney was. By the time that home got this, our Alexa carried on speaking for about 4.5 minutes with all of the details around Kourtney Kardashian. Unfortunately, here it said it didn't understand the question. I could ask it, but I don't want to stand here for 4.5 minutes listening to the rest of the story. So I started looking at this, and I thought, okay, this is kind of weird. My Alexa, or my Amazon Echo, just sits next to the television set. Nothing was happening except watching a show on television, and suddenly it started responding. So I thought, well, is Kim just a random event, right? Is she just trying to hack into my home? Or are others trying to do the same thing? So I went snooping. I went looking for other people who might be doing the same thing.
My poor cashmere socks. Alexa, reorder another pair of Brescianis.
Reordering Bresciani socks.
So Alec Baldwin is also trying to break into my home. Now, I must admit, that ad is done quite well because he doesn't give enough time between Alexa and the request. Otherwise, there would probably be lots of people buying Bresciani socks and showing up. I don't know how the size works or anything like that. So now we discover that there's actually 2 of them, a gang, a Hollywood gang, attacking into my home, a high-tech hacker community in Hollywood that's going after my home. So I thought, okay, there's a vulnerability in my Amazon Echo. But it's not that bad. I mean, really, the Echo, what can it actually do? So the original Echo and the new one, which doesn't have the nice speaker, they really have the same set of functions. When you go and have a look at it, there's a bunch of things you can do. And as David tried earlier, you can say things like, Alexa, what's the weather today?
Currently, in Vancouver, it's 81 degrees with clear skies and sun. Today, you can
Thank you, Alexa, stop. Okay, so I live in Vancouver. It thinks it's in Vancouver. I didn't tell it it was here. So, okay, it's living in Vancouver. But we can get information like the weather. We get our flash briefing. It annoys everybody in the house at 7 o'clock in the morning when you can ask it about NPR and BBC, and it tells you all of these horribly depressing stories. But again, it's just information that it's giving me, right? We can do other things. Alexa, set the alarm for 4:45.
Is that for 45 in the morning or in the afternoon?
This afternoon.
Alarm set for 4:45 p.m.
So when we get to that point, it's going to start making obnoxious noises, and I've set the alarm. This started setting some bells off in my head, because now Kourtney Kardashian could wake me up at some ungodly hour in the morning and can set to my clock, right? What other things can I do with my Alexa? Okay, hang on a minute. Some of these are these can impact my credit card. You can tell Alexa, and I'm not going to do this, please bring us an Uber. And I'm guessing that somewhere in Vancouver, Washington, an Uber is going to pull up in front of a house. I don't know what the penalty is for not showing up, but that could happen. And in fact, we can order Domino's pizza. Alexa, bedroom lights on.
Okay.
Now, that's not terribly impressive here, but let me rest assured, back in Vancouver, there are people really freaking out right now. Let's fix that. Alexa, bedroom lights off.
Okay.
So now my bedroom lights just went on, and a few seconds later went off. People in the house are wondering why this is happening. So now we can start doing the lights. Now those are just standard Philips Hue lights. Other things that we can hook to Alexa really easily are those cool, now I don't have one, but one of those things you can, the front door locks, that you can say things like, Alexa, unlock the front door. And click, the door unlocks, and now the door's open. I'm assuming that people can even do this by screaming through your window. Okay, that's kind of freaky, right? You've got things happening. Other things that can happen. What's my checking account balance? Woo, that's kind of freaky. Here.
Alexa, open Capital One.
Hi there. Welcome to Capital One. To verify it's you, please say the personal key you created when enabling the skill.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Great. You're all set. You can ask me for things like your account balance or make a credit card payment. How can I help?
Okay, so aside from the fact it wasn't my account, and 1, 2, 3, 4 is not my secret code, at least we had a level of authentication in place, right? It's a reasonable step to that the Capital One app is trying to do that. But it's kind of a little freaky here that someone yelling in through my living room window can go and pay my credit card account. That's sort of weird. So at least they have an authorization there, right? And I'm going to come back to this in a couple of minutes. It was done when you signed into the account. So you had to give your username and password, you sign into the account, you give this authorization code, and it then asks you to stand in front of the entire room and recite your authorization code to get into your account. So it's not really that secret, but it's a whole lot better than my bedroom lights that just randomly, to whoever screamed in through the window, turned the lights on, right? So, okay, we have the Amazon Echo. Obviously, there's a few interesting challenges here we have to take with security around authentication and around authorization. But is it limited to the Amazon Echo? So this is, and I'm going to press the button in a second, this is an actual White House press briefing that was recorded, and listen carefully to what happens.
Is the president upset
that he couldn't get even one Republican perhaps to sign?
Sure what's wrong with you.
So if you didn't hear that, he's asking a question, and the press secretary's Siri, or Apple phone sitting in their pocket, recognized, I assume, the word Syria or something like that, and proceeded to say, "I'm not sure what you want me to do about that." Which, in fact, was a perfectly valid response. So here we are sitting where Siri is in exactly the same boat. We've got voice access to it. It's listening for its call sign, its name, whatever it is we're going to call it, and goes ahead and blindly obeys our commands. Right? Really what I'm getting down to is that there's a whole new class of devices we're coming out and playing with. We've got things, but we've got devices with new user interfaces. We've actually got ones we can speak to, actually quite effectively, and we'll look at that in a moment. They're coming into their own. They are shipping out into houses. Right? We've got the Google one, there's the Amazon Echo, there's the Siri, there's the thing on the Microsoft Windows. What do they call that one? Yeah, Cortana, right? With all of these things that are sort of voice activated. And it feels like we're diving back to about 1988, right? Because all of the same problems that we did then. You remember we had the thing when the PC came out, and we said, we don't need to log into it. It'll only be used by one person, right? Yeah, that didn't work out so well for us. And we, as an identity community, are going through exactly the same problem. We're focusing on web-based authentication, where we're doing this entire paranoia around usernames and passwords and multi-factor authentications and biometrics and all sorts of weird stuff, which basically mean that I can't get into my account. Right? Something's always going to ask me a separate question that I don't know the answer to and I can't get in. And yet, what I really need to do is simply go to my Amazon Echo and say, by the way, can you check my account? And I can get straight in. So we're sort of focusing on one side of the problem. We're ignoring these new interfaces that are coming out, right? The voice interfaces and things like that. And the reality about them is that, yeah, they are hard. There's single companies that are coming out with these, and we can say, well, it's not really our problem. It's Amazon's problem, right? We've just looked at the issue of going to set the alarm, which I hope doesn't go off at 4:30 in the afternoon back in Vancouver, and it will. But imagine now, given what we've had, that you get a late-night infomercial. And the infomercial talks about wonderful movies that you can see. And at the end of the infomercial, it says, you only need, say, Alexa, order me a copy of 2001, A Space Odyssey. No, it didn't even understand me. And at that point, Alexa will say, if it understood you, I will order that. I will order that again. We saw Alec Baldwin ordering his socks. Okay, so Alexa's kind of nice about it. It puts it onto your shopping list that you can go and look at later, and they do have a code you can put onto it, so you've got to authenticate that. But imagine the kinds of things that can just be slipped into, thank you, Kim Kardashian, slipped into TV shows, slipped into these late-night infomercials, et cetera, that can now interact with these devices that we've brought into our home. On top of that, think of all of the things that these devices are now being connected to. Our lights, our front door, Nest thermostats, IFTTT, one of the web services, enable you to connect these things to hundreds of different kinds of devices that we're working with. And there's no authentication at all when we start looking at these devices. David and I were actually talking about this during the break about, well, does it know that it's me and not my kids? Right? No, it doesn't. In fact, he started talking to my Alexa, and I felt crushed when it started listening to him. Right? And there is no way to sort of get into that. So there's a whole bunch of possibilities, a whole set of vulnerabilities here that we're kind of ignoring. Right? And it's not their fault. Obviously, they are the Hollywood celebrities that are bringing the voice into our bedrooms. But the reality about this is it's our fault. We are the identity professionals. We are the people who should be thinking about identity. And it's hard, right? How do you authenticate a voice device? How do you authorize a voice device. Who can order pizza? Right? How do we do that while keeping the friction low for those of us who need to order pizza and raising the friction for the guy who yells in through my living room window? Right? That's our job. That's what we're supposed to be doing. Identity is important. It's important not only in web browsers and HTML pages and things like that. It's important as we start bringing these things into play. And we as a community are sort of saying, oh yes, we can integrate them sort of with our web servers and things, but with these new interfaces, we need to start thinking of, quite likely, new standards, new ways of approaching these. How do we do voice authentication? Kind of feels a little bit like that whole biometrics thing, that maybe we just got a little bit more to go on that and it'll actually know the difference between me and my son. And yet we're focusing on the web browser experience, which absolutely is where most of the stuff is happening right now. So I've got one more clip to play, and I don't know, I think most of us in the room, looking around the room, probably remember this clip.
Computer? Computer? Ah. Hello, computer.
Just use the keyboard.
Keyboard. How quaint.
25 years ago, Star Trek told us that we were going to be talking to our computers. And in fact, we are. We're talking to our computers, I don't know, what's that, 3-4 inches in diameter, fits into your pocket. And we're actually talking to them and having them do realistic things. And I think the sort of issue that we need to deal with is that these interfaces are coming fast and furious to us as an industry. And it looks like we're about to be caught flat-footed yet again. I think we've been here before, again and again. It's kind of like deja vu all over again. We've done this before. We've been in this position and we need to have a look at it. And there's a whole bunch of new things here that we need to start addressing. And given the state of where these devices are, we need to start addressing fairly quickly. So that's the story of Kim Kardashian hacking into my home. Hopefully, some of these topics, I don't have answers to them, but hopefully some of these topics will lead us down a path of discussion as to how we can actually give or allow our users to have control over what these devices can do and who can deal with them, right? Ultimately, it comes back down to authentication and authorization. But how do we deal with these in these new interfaces and these new models? And I have 45 seconds left, so. Questions? Questions, thoughts, or comments? Anyone? Both Jerry and David. Let's go to David first.
Alexa, how do you deal with authorization? Not very well.
Doesn't look like it can hear you. We can probably ask it, though. Alexa, how do you deal with authorization?
I'm not sure what you meant by that question.
Apparently not. Jerry. Yes, and in fact, depending on how you say things, it does. This is actually live and connected to the internet right now, so all of the answers it's been giving, oh, that reminds me. Alexa, cancel alarm for 4:45 p.m.
4:45 p.m. alarm canceled.
Whew, Vancouver is safe. Jamie.
I don't know what I'd find if I went looking in, say, the draft NIST 800-63-3 about this, but ought there not be something along the lines of, you know, levels of seriousness, like, say, Alexa, empty my bank account and send it to this nice Nigerian man?
He said Siri.
That I ought not be able to do. What are we going to do about, how do you map the concept of levels of consequence on something like this?
Yeah?
I mean, their answer, just don't train it.
But the reality is we are. I mean, the Capital One app is a perfect example for it, right? At least they do have an authentication piece inside of that. And you know, looking at it right now, I'm not sure that there's any alternative way of actually dealing with that. But at least there is a way that says you can't yell it through the living room window and transfer money. But you're right, right? These are things we should be looking at.
And I suppose as an interface, in a way, really, Capital One didn't tell that because they decided that their CISO had an Alexa policy. They did that because they have a general rule that we have to have certain level of security on any transaction, and if we're going to allow this, right? So in a sense, the security policies of something that's invoked with this get imported into it if they're being obeyed. But that doesn't really do anything on the interface end, does it?
No. And of course, the other thing about it, which is quite scary, is that it still doesn't know who I am. The only thing that it knows is that this device is somehow electronically linked with an Amazon account. It probably, I don't know. Alexa, what's my name?
This device has only one profile, Allan's.
There we go. It knows it's mine, but yet it answered you. If you ask the same question, it would. So it's actually not my name. It's what's its name, right? Because it's Allan's device. So it's tying back to my account in Amazon.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because it says it has a single profile, so maybe you can add more profiles tonight. Either it's possible today or there's...
Stop thinking like that. Probably. Yeah. I mean, it's still a fundamental device, and it doesn't tell the difference between me or anybody else in the household, or for that matter, Kim Kardashian.
There's really also things that you would not want to do, like transfer money to the Nigerian man. You don't want to do that, so you're never going to be able to do that with the Alexa.
Unless the Nigerian man is your father, in which case there are use cases where that may be valid. But yes, I think in the general case,
Transferring money as a whole might not be a valid use case for Echo. Because it's so sensitive. You know, it goes back to the gentleman in the corner and the policies. There might be things you just don't want to do through a non-graphical interface.
I'd like to think people were smart enough to think that, but they said the same thing about the web. Remember when they said we'd never do banking over the internet? Yeah, I mean, you're right. There are certain things we probably shouldn't do with it. At the moment, it's a very low assurance identity piece. I think that's our job now to have a look at and to say, how do we fix that? What can we fix about that? And it's coming out, right? There's Amazon, there's Google, there's Apple, there's other ones that are going to be doing the same thing. And motor cars are in exactly the same boat. There's a number of cars that are now, you sit down in the car and you can have a conversation with your vehicle, which, you know, but yeah, you can ask it where to go and build maps up and do things like that. And again, it makes you wonder who should be allowed to talk to my car.
There's another issue that you touched on, which is around the privacy, because at least Google, it keeps the recordings of all the things you've said. You can go back in the history, and you can know that on April 3rd you said, oh, order some pizza with extra cheese.
So yes, and Amazon actually keeps your recordings as well. You can go and delete them. According to their use case, they say they use it for the training of the device. However, there is an interesting piece about that, and that is if you have ordered something before and actually gone through and bought it, it'll just reorder, and that's how Alec was able to order his new pair of socks, right? Because it knew it was reorder my socks, and it said reordering. And so if you've done it before, it then sees that as a trend. So yeah, and of course, it doesn't have to be you that did it before. It merely has to be Alexa that somebody told it before to do. Yeah.
So I know they have a voice remote called Alexa.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that's radio frequency.
The voice. So the voice is just a microphone. So what's actually happening on here is that this has a microphone built into it. So it's listening to my voice.
It's got a remote. They have a remote for it.
The remote.
It's a voice-activated remote, so you can talk to the remote
I don't have that, but yes, I believe you can. Yes.
The question is, how easy is it to pair? Because I can pair that to any Amazon Echo if I'm in someone's home. I can pair it together. And then
Scarier and scarier.
anywhere in the house, it can be outside the window as long as I've got radio frequency.
So if you see people walking around your neighborhood with remotes hanging around their neck, probably, yeah. I don't know. I don't know what the pairing, have you tried to pair them?
No, I haven't. But I'm curious.
I'm very curious. I might now be the owner of 2 Alexas and a remote. Alexa, buy me a remote. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what the pairing process is or how that works, but yes, that's another interesting vector.
Our conversation scared her if you did not.
Yes, you're talking about me. I'm not going to respond.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Do I need to say more? You can probably train it. I haven't spent any time training it and looking for that. It is remarkably good at first-time recognition. Right? David stood up here and spoke to it, and it had no problem at all and just responded directly. It would be interesting. Feel free to come up and try and talk to her. Please don't order anything, but come up and talk to it and see, how it goes in. I have not seen a sort of training, although it does learn from your speech patterns, and so over time it sort of gets better with you, but that doesn't mean that the base level gets any worse. So does Siri actually train it to the point that it trains worse, that it gets worse for the average speaker? And that's sort of going back to the one where they were in the White House, right? Simply picking up the response. It may respond better to you over time, but I'm not sure that that rules out how it responds to other people. I don't know. Cool. That's actually a good step forward. Although the problem with that is that we still have the issue of, does it respond to my voice or my wife's voice or the kid's voice? We have all of these sort of requirements. It's becoming an interface. Right. It becomes more of a home device, and with the number of things that you can connect it up to, your thermostat, your lights, and all of these things. That's right. Well, it is, right? It's Allan's device because it's hooked up to my Amazon account. It's back to that single user thing. We have no authentication process. Now, I'm not saying that we need to plug a keyboard in. How quaint. But I'm not saying we need a keyboard into the device, but we should have some form of authentication. I don't know what that looks like. Right? I'm raising the specter for us as professionals to be able to explore that. Has anybody worked? Anybody got that to work? Yours worked? Yes. iPhone? Yes. Wow. Mine didn't.
Mine worked an hour and then stopped.
An hour and then stopped?
The first time it didn't work, they actually have to hit the key and resend it. And the second time they resend the key, it works. Third story.
Your Cloud Identity Summit app, on the other hand, is sending all your information and your credit cards to Shenzhen.
Ooh.
Not really, but seriously, we talked yesterday about the many holes in privacy policy for the app, the builder of the app. We take on these things every day without thinking, and not just millennials.
That's right. Because it's cool. Cool. So thank you, everybody. I guess that's probably taking us to the end of the day, and the next keynote is at 5:30, right? That's right. We've got our panel in here, which your panelists may as well come up, and we're having the conversation anyway. So Peter, why don't you come up, and Robin, you can come on up, and we can continue talking about these authorization things. Grab yourself a chair.